Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today we start something probably different, something new, related, but still something new. Last time we finished speaking about major Renaissance poets, and before that we studied major Renaissance dramatists. We spoke about several terms that we needed to understand, and we still do. We spoke about censorship, patronage, and we also spoke about the canon, and last time, the rules of decorum. What do you know about the rules of decorum? Did you read more stuff about the rules of decorum? What does the term rules of decorum mean in the context of literature here? Rules of decorum. Yes, please.
The rules of decorum are the rules that the poet has to have in his personality or in his style of writing to be in the group of canon.
To write great poetry, you had to follow certain rules, specific rules. And many of these rules were like strict. You had to follow them. What topic to choose?
Language,
universal truth, remember? The language itself. Not everything can be poetic. Only highly embellished poetic language. And then the form itself. You had to follow a particular structure. A highly organized form of poetry. And in the 17th century and 18th century, this became even more famous than now, more common than now. But during the time of Elizabeth and later on, we have a group of poets who did not follow the rules of decorum, who did not wanted to obey these ancient rules of writing poetry, of versification. Before I explain things, I'll give you examples from their poetry, and I'll let you come to certain conclusions yourself. Look at this poem. And again, I'm not mentioning the name of the poet because we care more about the text itself. We need to appreciate the text regardless of who the poet is. This is a poem, The Sun Rising. Look at the shape of the poem and tell me what you think. Please.
Have an Italian rhyme scheme.
How do you know?
A, B, B, A, C, D, E.
Did you count the lines? How many lines?
Not a sonnet.
This is not a sonnet. 10 lines, not 14. So it's not definitely not. By the way, this is the first stanza of a poem consisting of 3 stanzas. So the sun rising, number 1. Okay, you noticed very quickly the rhyme scheme. Good, very good of you. And you think it has, in part, something from the Italian sonnet Petrarch. Something clearer than this, please. Oh, remember the poems before when we studied the sonnets? More or less, they were like this. Oh, sorry. They were like this. Remember? 5 feet, 5 feet, 5 feet, 5 feet, 10 syllables, 10 syllables, 10 syllables. Yes. Sometimes 4 feet, 4 feet, 4 feet, like 8 syllables, 8 syllables, 8 syllables. So you read a whole poem, a long poem. And I said this about Shakespeare's sonnets. We have over 150 sonnets. And almost all the lines consist of 10 syllables because this is the rules of decorum, this strict, rigid form of poetry in general, but of the sonnet in particular. So the first thing we notice is that this poem, this was written again in the Elizabethan age. Clearly the shape is not following the rules of decorum. If you count the syllables, how many syllables do we have in the first line? How many syllables in busy? Busy. Happy. 2. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 4 feet. Unruly. 3. Unruly. Like happy. 2. Happiness. 3. Happily. 3. Happy. 3. The syllable depends on how many vowel sounds we have. And then, why dost thou thus?
4
2 feet.
How do you know the number of feet generally?
We divide the number.
You divide the number
by
7 by 2.
Yes.
And then, through windows and through curtains call on us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
5 feet.
Come on. Clearly there is an intention to change, to be different. An intention to not follow the rules. Not write a poem with strictly the same number of syllables and the same number of feet. If you go more, you'll find again, I think this is also 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 5 feet, 4 feet. So number 1, we notice the irregular form. The number of lines, the number of feet in the first line is not the same, second, third, etc. What about the rhyme scheme? Can someone do the rhyme scheme? Can you come here, please? Yes? Yeah. Sun A Y, tell them why. The first sound takes, listen, the first sound takes the first letter of the alphabet. Okay? Why B? Why not A? It's different. It's not the same. So we go to the second letter of the alphabet, which is B. Okay. A. B, sorry, yeah. New sound. We go to the next letter. Parentheses. C. No, definitely not. This is thus, us. This is parentheses. This is D. C. Offices, parentheses. No way. No way. This is M. This is D. D. Not the same sound. Definitely not the same sound.
It's a couplet.
It's a couplet, yeah?
Yeah.
E. E. Thank you very much. Thank you. Is it regular? How can we tell? Is it musical? Does it make a musical pattern? A, B, B, A, C, D, C, D, E. It is. It is musical. But we can double check when we look at the other stanzas. So this is stanza number 1, this is stanza number 2. Strong? Someone do it quickly. Someone. The rhyme scheme. Yeah, quickly.
Strong A, think B, wink B, long A, then
Thine.
C, me D, mine C,
C.
me D,
Also D.
yesterday late
E, E. So? The same. Go here. It's the same. So this is a regular rhyme scheme. Regular rhyme scheme, musical, but the number of feet in each line is not the same. But does that mean this is not musical? Let's read the poem. Someone read the poem. The first stanza. Someone, please. Yeah, go on.
The sun rising, busy old cruel unruly sun, why dost thou thus throw windows and throw curtains call on us? Must to thy
Motions.
lovers, seasons run.
Saucy, pedantic.
Saucy, pedantic,
Rich.
rich, gauche, shy, lady school boys and sour pretenses.
Parentheses.
God told Kurt, huntsman, that the king will ride. Call country ants to harvest offices. Love all like no season knows, nor climb. nor have hours, days, months, which are the rages,
The rags
rags
of time. I think there is some music into this. Can you do it? Yeah, please.
Busy old fool, unruly son, why dost thou thus throw windows and
It's not throw. Throw, it's like you throwing windows, through windows.
through windows and through curtains fall on us? Must to thy motion lovers seasons run? Susie Milan, take rich, go child, let schoolboys and sore predant.
Sour apprentices.
Summer breaks. Go till Carrion huntsmen that the king will ride. Call country ants to harvest offices. Love all alike, not season laws, nor recline, nor hours, days, months, which are the rags of time.
Beautiful reading. Thank you very much. Let's see what the poet is saying here. What is he talking to? Who is he talking to? Who's he addressing?
Busy old.
Okay. Who's that? Is he talking to a woman,
Sun.
to a person?
Sun.
Yeah. He's talking to the sun.
A personification.
And there is, if you don't read the title here of the poem, and someone tells you, busy, old, fool, unruly son, I'm sure some of you will write it this way with O. Because these features, unruly means naughty. Fool, busy, adjectives that describe people rather than things. So there is a personification of the sun. And generally, the sun is also a symbol. A symbol means something that stands for something else. It symbolizes power. It symbolizes authority.
A new start.
Probably a new start, generally. But here, is he happy with the sun?
No.
Remember that text when the sun was good because the winter of discontent? But here, the guy is attacking the sun, calling it unruly, old, fool, busy. He is not happy with the sun because the sun keeps sticking its nose, its head through the windows and the curtains. So he's busy, old fool, unruly sun. Why dost thou? He's interrogating the sun. Through windows and through curtains call upon us. Must to thy motions, lovers, seasons run? Saucy, pedantic, rich, go, get out. That's why I would usually here in this context take the sun as a symbol of authority. What's authority? Power. The mainstream. The official world view. The poet, in a way, is personifying the sun to make this idea clear, as if he's talking to a human being, to, I don't know, the king, or probably the people, the critics who decide the rules of poetry.
Maybe.
You know what the word pedantic is? Pedantic is someone who uses language in a way to show off, like using big words, powerful language, just to show off that I can use better language than you. So the fact that the poet is personifying the sun and describing it as pedantic and as nosy, nosy because it sticks its nose, curious, waking them up. He's saying, go out. You're busy, you're old, you are a fool. Don't disturb us, the lovers, because the lovers must not or do not obey your rules. In my reading of this poem, I think the poet is, again, when he breaks the decorum of the lines here, he's also breaking the rules by challenging the authority itself. The sun that stands for power and authority. The sun here, in my opinion, could be the authority of criticism and poetry, the rules of decorum. Because you had to write poetry in a particular way, and the poet here is dismissing this. Get out. Don't tell me what I should do, when I should wake up. Why are you sticking your head through the windows and through the curtains? Get out, go. Instead of waking me up, disturbing me, telling me, dictating things on me, go child, let schoolboys. Go wake up school children. and sour apprentices. Apprentices is originally apprentice, the boys who work at somebody's place to learn a craft or a skill. صبي يعني. So sour, you know sour, someone who doesn't want to go to work. Go wake them up. Go till the court, the huntsmen, the people in the court, that the king is going outside. Go call the farmers. Till the farmers go harvest your crops. Leave us alone. And then we have the beautiful, beautiful couplet here. Love, this is so like Shakespeare, probably more beautiful in many ways. When he says here, must to thy emotions, lovers, seasons run? I shouldn't obey the sun, because we're more powerful. Love, all alike, no season knows, nor climb. Love is all the time. It's not in the morning, it's not at night, it's not in the afternoon, it's not when you're hungry, when you're thirsty. It's all the time. The sun does not dictate this. So in brief, we have a text here where the poet is clearly breaking the rules. How? Number one, the form itself. But is the form related to the meaning? In my opinion, yes. This is a revolutionary poem in which the poet, the speaker says, I don't want to obey anybody.
And I'm breaking the rules.
I'm breaking the rules. Look at the language. Remember, we said the language was, especially the language of courtly love. This is a love poem. The language of courtly love, remember the sonnet. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove. But this is a poem that, busy old fool, unruly son, why dost thou through curtains and through windows call upon us? It's like there's a powerful beginning here. There's someone who is dramatic about this, probably expressing unhappiness or dissatisfaction. That's example number one. The same thing applies to the other stanza. Another text, this is one we have in the book.
Yeah.
What do you notice? Quickly. Look at the text. Tell me what you notice about this. Raise your hand, please. Remember, generally, I do it like this. I look at the poem. That's the first thing I do. The second thing is,
Count the lines.
I count the lines, because it could be a sonnet. If it is a sonnet, there is something I can say. After the lines, the counting, I go for the rhyme scheme. So what do you notice, please?
It doesn't have several
What?
stanzas.
Okay, so it's one block.
It's 14 lines.
14 lines. Interesting. It is
Sonnet.
a sonnet. Remember the sonnet. Italy, Petrarch, particular subject matter, particular rhyme scheme, Shakespeare.
The rhymes.
The rhyme scheme. Let's go for the rhyme scheme. Can someone do it?
5 feet.
This is going to be problematic. Come here, please. Yes. Okay, no problem. Tell them what you're doing.
Okay, the first one is the first alphabet.
Okay.
A, U, meant, it is totally different. Bend and meant, A, sorry, B.
Okay, good.
Mu and U, A. Du, C, and
Dew and new are not the same. Dew, new. They're the same.
N and bend, B. Defend, and B. Untrue, A.
Okay, before she continues, what does this remind you of? Italian sonnet, Petrarch. Remember A, B, B, A, B, B, A, C, D, C, D, C, D. Go on.
Fan, C, enemy, D, again, fan, C,
Enemy. Enemy.
I, for I.
It's an I verse. D.
Are you sure? Maybe it is. Listen. We studied something called imperfect rhyme. What is an imperfect rhyme?
It's not perfectly.
There is rhyme, but it doesn't rhyme 100%, probably 50%. So enemy,
Like
enemy, and I, they are close, but not close enough to be perfect rhyme. So it should be D, D. Before she continues, this is also Petrarch.
Yes.
However, oh, thank you. What is EE? Couplet. Thank you very much. Good. Listen to me. The imperfect rhyme, again, remember, we said this before. Either it was read in a particular way, or when you read it, you just do it, extend it, stretch it a little bit. So it could be like enemy, I, in a way, little bit close. Or could have been pronounced in a way that, but more important to me is that an imperfect rhyme tells us, when you read the text, be careful. The poet is sending us a signal, a particular message, where we need to stop and see why there is imperfection here. Does it reflect a particular idea? And usually it does. So is this a Shakespearean or a Petrarchan sonnet? Italian or English? Are you sure?
Half and half. Mixture.
Oh, generally, yeah, Gigi, but this is her brother, her sister, EE. Okay, generally, we have several forms, but the most important forms are, again, the Italian, the English, Petrarchan, Shakespeare. We have a person here who's going for Petrarch, the original sonneteer, and then at the end, all of a sudden, shifts to Shakespeare. In a way, creating a new form. In a way, mixing things and bringing a new form. A, B, B, A, B, B, A, C, D, C, D, E, E. And remember, the sonnet with a couplet, it means something. Remember, we said some people believe that only Shakespeare could do this, where he develops in 12 lines a particular problem and gives us the twist, the resolution, the closure in 2 lines. So this is someone saying, I don't want to follow Shakespeare, but I can be as smart as Shakespeare, as good as Shakespeare, and this is the couplet I have here. So, sonnet, different rhyme scheme. What do you notice? What else do you notice about it? Now read. What is the sonnet about? Does anyone want to read? Probably the first quatrain, yes?
Batter my heart, 3% God for you, as yet but not breathe, shine and seek to mend, that I may rise and stand, O earth to me and bend. You're forced to break, blow, burn, and make me new.
No. Read this again and pay attention to the b sound, the alliteration.
You're forced to break, blow,
No, break,
and
break,
make me new.
blow, burn.
It's hard to.
Yeah, that's part of the strong language, strong opening here. Is this a love poem? There's God here. You know, 3 persons in Christianity, we have Trinity.
Yes.
The Trinity. This is a religious poem, and the whole poem is about the poet trying to break free from the sins of God's enemy, Satan, the devil. He's asking God to break this relationship between him and Satan, to free him.
He said, divorce me.
Divorce me from who? From his relationship with the enemy of God, Satan. Because he wants to be close to God. He wants to be free. And there's a paradox. I like the paradox here. Imprison me to make me free. What is a paradox?
Saying something and meaning and saying the opposite.
That's irony. Paradox, a sentence that contradicts itself. When someone says, imprison me because I want to be free. What? Feed me because I want to be hungry. Break me because I want to be new. Generally, it's a statement that contradicts itself. When you first read it, you think it doesn't make sense. But when you analyze it, when you put it in its context, you realize how smart and witty this is. So he wants to break the old him, the sinner, the person that is close to Satan, to the devil, because he wants to be new with God. He wants God to imprison him away from the enemy of God. Took him to him.
Yes.
If you are a prisoner with God, you're still free. It offers you a lot of freedom. So what is this poet doing? Again, changing the form, changing the rhyme scheme, and changing the subject matter of the most important form of English literature at that time, the sonnet. So there is a deliberate insistence on this, on bringing something new, on breaking the rules of decorum. This is someone saying, no, I am more powerful than the rules of decorum, because the rules of decorum are busy old fool unruly. They keep just calling upon us, telling us what to do and what not to do. I'm not going to follow this. Okay. One more. This is another sonnet. Probably you can post it on you. Look at this poem.
The book.
It's in the book, by the way.
Yeah.
And the title is Easter Wings. You know? Not Red Bull this time. But if you look at the text from afar, it sounds like a bird flying, or probably two birds flying, because this is body, the wings, the body, the wings. What was that?
Letter M.
Yeah.
The M.
Yes.
But generally, I just turned it this way because I wanted to show you how it could look like a bird, like wings. Easter, wings. Also Easter, you know, Easter, we are in March, Easter. This is also a religious Christian thing here. This is the poem. Now the title Easter Wings might sound religious. It is religious. But when you look at the shape of the poem, remember, when we go for Shakespeare, for Ben Jonson, even Marlowe and those poets, same number of syllables and feet. This looks crazy because we have long line, shorter, short, and then the shortest, and then it gets long. Listen, now these poets, this group of poets, did something new to literature, to English poetry. And this is important because to them, the meaning is more important than the rule. Again, the meaning is more important than the rule. If I feel like writing a religious poem in the sonnet form, you go for it. If I feel that the line needs 5 feet, I go there. If I feel it needs less or more, I go there. The idea is more important. The idea is more significant than the rule itself, than the number of the syllables in many ways. Let's see how they connect, where the meaning and the form are connected. In the rules of decorum, like in Arabic poetry, by the way, sometimes when you read Arabic poetry, you find that a particular word doesn't fit in the context.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I mentioned this before here. What's his name? Elia Abu Madi, in one of his poems, كم تشتكي وتقول إنك معدم. He's inviting people to be optimistic. And in one line he says, وَالشَّمْسُ فَوْقَكَ عَسْجَدٌ يَتَضَرَّمُ. It's like he's saying, like, be happy because the sun is burning. It doesn't work. Why? Because he chose this particular word, although it is the wrong word, because of the rhyme and because of the meter. It wasn't wal-qafiyah. For those metaphysical poets, for those poets we're studying today, the meaning is more important. They can break the rule for the right word, for the right idea. Let's see how the meaning, the theme, is connected with the form.
Yes.
So this is the longest line, right?
Yes.
And this is the shortest line. Same here. 2 lines, very short, long. The first line says, Lord, again, God. Religious. Lord, who created man in wealth and store. And that's why we have the longest line. He's saying, God gave man everything. This big, the biggest thing. God created man in wealth and store. And that's why it's the longest line. What happens next? Man begins to lose. And then because there is loss here, the line Shrinks. Thank you for the word. Shrinks. And then decay. You know, decay, decline, fades, decaying even more and more, till he became most poor. Most poor, and we have the shortest line. But what happens next? With thee. Thee here, Lord. Let me rise. Because there's rising, it grows again bigger because you connect, you go back to God. As larks, as birds. You know the lark? Harmoniously, and sing this day thy victories, then shall the fall further the flight in me. And oh, thank you. I love the further alliteration. The fall further the flight. It's alliteration where the sound is like, it's like wings fluttering. Similar to this in a way, fluttering. The fall further the flight in me. There is alliteration here. But also there is a paradox. What's a paradox? A sentence that is self-contradictory. How does the fall further the flight? If you fall, you fall. But here he says, if I fall, I rise up above. Because this is a religious concept here. If you commit a sin and you repent, you go back to God, you will rise higher than ever before. If you count the number of syllables here, 10. Can you say how that worked with you? Create, 2, 10, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 5 feet. And then 4 feet. 3 feet. 2, 1, 2 feet, 1.
Syllable.
1 foot. Yeah. 1 foot.
Half a foot.
1 foot. No, 2 syllables, 1 foot. Plural of foot. Feet. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The same thing happens again and again. But again, what I'm saying here is that the longest line is connected with what it means. Wealth and store. God gave man everything. And when man lost everything, became the most poor. Same thing happens again. Most thin, because this is the most thin physically, it's the most thin. But the poet is saying that I want to imb. Imb means like link, glue, connect my wing on thine. And that's why we have here. This is a bird, probably standing for man. And this is another bird standing for Jesus or God. And he wants the wings to be connected so they can, affliction, pain shall advance the flight in me. I want to go back to you, God. Forgive my sins. I love you, God. I'm coming back to you. Look at the rhyme scheme here. We have store, same, B, more, A, B, poor also A, D, C, rise, D. Listen, harmoniously rhymes with thee but imperfectly. So C, also rise and victories, they rhyme but imperfect rhyme. So D and me, C. So A, B, A, C, D, C, D, C. And the same thing happens later on. What do we see here again is that a poet deliberately, on purpose, changing the form.
Yes.
And the form is not random.
No, it's
Connected with the meaning in many ways. If you notice, we have in one stanza, we have 2 imperfect rhymes here. And so they don't look for the perfect rhyme. They don't look for the most beautiful, most elegant, most powerful, most highly, like a word that really is poetic, that only poets and only people who go to university know. The right word in the right place is usually used, because the meaning is more important than the rule. What is this? Okay, see, this is clearer here. What is this? This is John Donne and his school of poets. John Donne. John Donne. And his followers. George Herbert. The Easter Wings poem is a poem by someone named George Herbert. So in brief, to wrap things up, John Donne as a poet clearly was dissatisfied with the way English poetry was written during his time. He didn't like the rules of decorum, so he broke them. He changed many things. He changed something about the form, about the language, about the rules, the meter. For this poet, the idea is more important than the rule. So he would break the rule just to convey the right idea. And what does that mean? Does it mean that it was okay to do this then?
No, I think he was punished.
Of course not. Remember, this is the heyday of Renaissance. And then we will be having the neoclassical age, the age that emphasized rules over meanings in so many ways. The rules of decorum were sacred. You had to follow them. And when someone comes to do this, number one, he's viewed as a threat. Writing something different, writing something new could be viewed as a threat because some patrons might find this interesting and would be, oh, I want this poet who writes different poetry and I want to give him money, I want to bring him. So probably some critics of that time viewed this as a threat, but definitely they didn't like John Donne. But not because John Donne was writing bad poetry or difficult poetry or complex poetry. It was because John Donne was breaking the rules. And the rules for them are the most important things. One critic, Johnson, we studied Johnson already as a dramatist and a poet, he said, John Donne deserves hanging. Yeah, that's extreme. He deserves hanging. For what? For writing different poetry. Where's the freedom of speech, right? Yes. And he said John Donne will perish. You know, perish, he will decline, he will be forgotten. Perish. No one will remember. Perish. Yeah, he will vanish.
Disappear.
He will disappear because no one will like his poetry. Actually, many people liked his poetry, but the mainstream critics, the critics who called for the rules of decorum, didn't like this, and they kicked John Donne and his followers from the canon. They would also not talk about them, ignore them, and when they talk about them, they would negatively frame them. Remember the word frame?
Yes.
Important word here. Frame, to describe somebody in a negative way or a positive way. But here, John Donne was negatively framed by the mainstream critics. How? Someone said he deserves hanging. Someone said he will perish. Someone said he writes a perplexing poetry. Someone said, John Donne, this is not poetry, this is verse. Someone said even, because a lot of critics agree that John Donne is smart, witty. Alexander Pope said, no, he doesn't have, an extraordinary kind of wit. All poets have the same level of wit like that. So John Donne and his followers, for about 200 years, was in a way marginalized, was not in the canon, was kicked out. And thanks to a very important man, a very important critic, a very important poet in the 20th century, early 20th century, T.S. Eliot. The wasteland, April is the cruelest month. When he was reading poetry, he came across the metaphysical poets, John Donne. And he said, wow, these are important poets. He showed how important their poetry was. To the extent that in the 20th century, John Donne and his followers became more important than Johnson, than Dryden, than Samuel Johnson, and then Alexander Pope combined. Many poets in the 20th century started to imitate them in a way. That's why John Donne is considered a modernist. What is a modernist? حداثي. Modernism الحداثة. He brings new ideas. He experiments. He changes. The 20th century went back to the poets like John Donne to imitate them, to learn from them. And finally, when we read the literature books, we will come across the term metaphysical. Listen to this again. Metaphysical poetry, metaphysical poets. This is an ugly term. Look at it. It's horrible, right? Metaphysical poetry. It sounds terrorizing, intimidating, spooky. Now, this term was used again by the mainstream critics, Dryden and Johnson, to describe John Donne and his followers. What does it mean, metaphysical? Believe me, it doesn't mean much. It doesn't mean anything. But it was used in order to, again, make people just, in a way, hate those poets, not read them. Because I want to read poetry, oh yeah, metaphysical. The name even sounds difficult. So this is also negative framing. So according to T.S. Eliot, the term metaphysical was a term of abuse. What's abuse? As an insult. So it wasn't used to describe them, but it was used to insult them. To tell people, don't read this poetry. I'll stop here. I will continue this later on, but let me just summarize the last point here and see how funny literature is and how life works against certain ideologies and ideas. Ben Jonson said John Donne will perish for breaking the rules. Ironically, nowadays, John Donne is more important than Ben Jonson and probably other mainstream critics, neoclassical critics of that time. So no matter how much sometimes the official mainstream critics and poets try to dismiss some poetry, not because it's bad, but because it's against their ideology, against their rules, because it threatens them. No matter how hard they try, later on, people will have the chance to read this poetry and appreciate it for its beauty and its contribution. Okay? So these are the major points I just discussed here. You don't have to write them down. You can see them in the video, by the way. And next class, we'll continue doing John Donne, George Herbert, and Andrew Marvell, and I'll repeat these ideas and speak about the features of metaphysical poetry. Do you have any question? Please.
How we can know the irregular rhyme scheme like this?
Okay, thank you. When you look at the poem and trace the rhyme, generally go with your gut. Meaning like, what do you feel here? How do you feel? And then go through it again and try to see whether two rhymes are close, not close enough to be perfect rhymes, but probably 50%, and you bring them together. So here, generally, when I first read this, I didn't like rise with victories.
Yeah.
Because rise is different from victories. But does it sound like it?
Yeah.
In a way, yes. A little bit. Not 100%. So we go for imperfect rhyme. When we remember these are the metaphysical poets, we say, oh, they didn't want to follow the rules 100%.
Yeah.
But there is more to this. When you study the imperfect rhyme, I think you will find more reasons why this is imperfect. There's something going on. We need to analyze. Okay, thank you. If you have any question, we can continue after this. Thank you and good luck.